hopefully it's all working here. Alright guys, hopefully you can all hear me, and hopefully you can all hear the two great people that are with me today. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
No, of course. Please, still plays. Go ahead.
I'm still plays. I guess free-to-play Grand Arena player. I've had a YouTube channel for about 2.5 years going on now, and it's been growing steadily. And I've always loved being part of the community.
Awesome.
And I am Kin from Grand Arena Science. I have a very insignificant YouTube channel, really. I do most of my stuff with grandarenascience.com, where you can go and search for different counter videos from Flea 3v3, 5v5, etc., etc. And I love Grand Arena. I am not quite as free to play as Still Plays. But yeah, I love the GAC community. I think it's a lot of fun. I like playing GAC, like talking about GAC, like watching other people play GAC, like hearing other people talk about playing GAC. Everything GAC related.
Awesome. I have just put your website, grandarenascience.com, in the chat so people can go check it out. Alright, so it's great to have you both on here today. And guys, you probably all know today's theme is Grand Arena, and there are no people better at it. Wait, oh, that's terrible with English. There's no one I'd rather have on here today than you two. Anyways, so what I wanted to get onto first is just to ease ourselves in. We can go over a few of the things that the chat have suggested. So to get it going easy and simple, let's all name our favorite Star Wars characters, both in canon and outside of canon. So I'll go first, and my favorite character is both canon. He's just canon anyway, but it's Kylo Ren is my favorite character. Would you both like to go ahead and name your favorite?
Go ahead, Ken.
I really like Ahsoka Tano. There's no real difference in canon, out of canon. I really find her character arc, basically how she developed as a character, because I really didn't know that much about her until the Clone Wars. I think that's awesome how she's developed. Like, fascinating character in the game and canon and everything. It's definitely my favorite.
Okay.
Absolutely agree about Ahsoka. That was a character I was unfamiliar with until playing SWGOH, and that got me into watching Clone Wars, the series, and appreciating how good of a character Ahsoka was. But prior to then, I've always had a soft spot for Greedo. Just love that guy.
Greedo's cool.
Greedo's cool. Greedo's cool.
So, wish he was better in the game.
He has some, like, I wouldn't say
he
he's good.
He has some niche uses, but
I'm a fan of his Zeta. The unresisted, unavoidable stun. I mean, when are you going to use it? I don't know, but it's not bad. So, just to catch you guys up if you haven't seen the chat, everyone's saying hey to you all. They're all excited to see you both. We've got some fans of Maul and Wicket. And Average Stormtrooper's a big fan of Greedo, and they're excited that you even brought them up. So, that's always good. And then obviously Young Han ? Yes, of course, Young Han's my favorite, but that's in Galaxy of Heroes. I mean, is he really like a character in Star Wars? It's just Han, isn't it? Anyways, we will move on to the actual talk show. That's why we're all here. So, the first thing really is, let's just introduce ourselves. Now, obviously, everyone knows who I am and what I do in Grand Arena, which is fail. But would you both like to kind of introduce yourselves? Just tell us a little bit about your Grand Arena records and how you do and all that.
Okay, I'm in Kyber 2. My overall GP is somewhere in that 7.8 million GP range. I have 2 Galactic Legends, and I do pretty well up against rosters that are in that 4 to 6 or 3 to 6 GL range, depending on what's I matched up in my bracket. The way that I play is I have a very deep roster. Like, I know I can't compete against Wales with their techniques and strategies, so I counteract that with being able to grind out wins. with my depth.
Okay. Which two GLs do you have?
I've got JMK and JML.
Ooh.
My life would be a lot easier with Sith Eternal Emperor, but that one's in process.
What relic level is your JML, out of curiosity?
They are both relic. No, JML's relic 7, and I've got a relic 6 JMK.
Nice.
I'm pretty stingy on my resources.
Fair enough. It's nice to see someone with. I know you said you're 7 million GP, but it's nice to see someone with less GLs still competing at higher levels, because there's obviously that big belief, I know from talking to people, where they say, you know, you can't get into the Kyber 2 and Kyber 1 having less than all the GLs. So it's awesome that you're doing it.
There's little things like knowing the counters, going after new characters and kits, and mods.
Yep. Alright, very nice.
And as for me, I'm like 10 million-ish GP in Kyber 1. I normally am in like the top 100, I guess, top 50, top 100, top 20, really depends on how much time I have to play. My play style is take the least amount of time. I mean, I don't like the whole, or not that I don't like, it's entertaining, but I don't think it, for me at least, it doesn't work out so well, where I spend a lot of time scouting the opponent's roster and trying to place a certain team. Partially it's just because of most of the opponents I play are similar sort of roster size to me, so we have all of the characters effectively. So it's more, I spend very little time scouting and more time on my own roster, and I just, personally, I play like the cheese, you could call it, defense, or offense, I mean, where I keep at least 4 of my GLs for offense 95% of the time. So I just try and make them, I try and one-shot everything for maximum points.
Okay.
Not that I succeed all the time, but I play more of the offensive playstyle. I love the combat part of GAC. So
I think it's really interesting that you said you don't really plan, because I'm someone who spends way too long going through every like record on SWGOH and looking at exactly what my opponent's going to use, and then 90% of the time they switch it up. The one time they've never switched it in months, and all of a sudden they swap it. But I think it's awesome that you don't plan, and it kind of shows maybe the people watching that you actually don't have to plan to do well.
Well, I will say, like, when I say don't plan, I don't plan necessarily versus certain opponents. Of course, I check their roster, and now I look to see what Datacrons they have, because that makes a big difference. But I find that if you're playing people that are sort of your skill level, or not even roster size, but if they're going to spend the same amount of time, trying to do well at GAC, they'll probably change something to be different than what you expect. So I try and make myself play better rather than trying outthinking my opponents. And I'm lazy, and it saves me a lot of time.
We have a comment in the chat, and it's directed to Still Plays. It's from Mike, and they said they love your low gear approach and efficiency, since in the end the game is a resource management game. So,
great, thanks, Mike.
Alright.
I think when resources are low, it's something where I think the way I think about it and play about it is I try not to put on resources. I need the game to give me a good excuse to actually apply them.
Okay. We are very different. When it comes to all this stuff, I just don't have the patience to do all this low gear. It's like with the Ewoks and stuff, for unlocking C-3PO. I don't have the time to do, or the patience to do all those resets and paying for like the Gear 8 unlocks and all that fun stuff.
Is your biggest enemy Glurmit, the little green cross? You hate that green cross. You want to get rid of it, eradicate it.
Oh, yeah. You won't find any green crosses in my roster. Yeah. In fact, I think it was last Grand Arena. We went through the bottom of my roster, and I think it was one of the droids. Which IG is it? The Sentinel. Is it Sentinel droid?
86?
Yeah, 86. The really bad one. Yeah, he had some green crosses, so I applied one piece for each loss, and now he's gear 12. So, how fun!
Yeah, even
I was looking at his gear. He's not bad.
Alright.
Actually, I thought about him. Sorry to go off topic, but I thought about putting him in the shorty team, the 50 RT team.
Oh yeah.
Because there's sort of depending on what you like, but there's a fifth slot in that team.
Mm-hmm.
If you play the T3 IG88 setup, there's a fifth slot that is not really used, and I thought it would be interesting to put him in there. But mine isn't even G12.
Yeah.
So, props to you, man.
Well, I'll have to find a way to use them now. Right, a few more comments and then we'll get on to the main stuff here. So, Arctic Gears said, Datacrons sadly feel like undergearing will be the death of them. Obviously, Datacrons do make a big difference. I want to say how big a difference the level 3 one for Darkside, the debuff one, whenever you apply 4 debuffs in a turn, that's made Lord Vader scary. Like, really, really scary. Like, I think in my last 3 matches, he's now had like 15 holds across all of those. Very, very scary. I want to try Kylo up against him, but my opponent didn't set it this round, unfortunately. Are there any Datacrons that stand out to either of you?
I've largely been disengaged with Datacron so far.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's something that I need to rectify.
Yeah.
To me, it's sort of like the 4 debuff one is a good example of how it takes Lord Vader from who's already a pretty good defensive team, but puts him into the even difficult to beat for, other GLs that normally would beat him. Like it changes the GL matchup in particular quite a bit.
Yeah.
The one that I think is going to be the similar style one in this next set is the JML Datacron. Like his alt one is just stupid, especially if you start out with 25% more turn meter.
Yeah.
Like you're not even, it's impossible to go first. It's going to be a nuke fest.
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
I've got to be honest, like, I've enjoyed Datacrons for the majority of the roster. Like, I don't know if either of you saw, in the past, since they come out, I've been testing them like crazy. And I got it down to consistently beating J&K Cat with Jedi Knight Luke, Jedi Knight Revan, no GLs needed. And someone who watches the channel actually messaged me and confirmed it does work. They used it in their Grand Arena last week. And stuff like that's awesome. Being able to kill, the best team in the game when you don't have access to them. But what I don't like, and I'm sure you all saw Arnold's stream when he got a little bit heated, is stuff like Rey healing for like 2 million health on ultimate. Yeah. I just feel like having GLs be part of the Datacrons is just not a good move, personally. Anyways, we're not here to talk about Datacrons. We are here to talk about Grand Arena. So, I'm going to start it off by saying, for both of you, what is one team which you would stand by and you would say, you must have this team to do well in Grand Arena? And try not to say Imperial Troopers.
Oh.
That is the default answer.
Yes.
But if not the Troopers, it's Night Sisters.
Okay.
I love Night Sisters, and I think I really like that Omicron too.
Have you applied it?
I have not applied it yet, but it's something that it probably will be the next one I do. Because it'll eliminate the RNG and a lot of the counters I try to use it for.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Actually, I also really love the Asajj Omicron, and I'm not sure if I'll apply it for 3v3. Maybe, but I think in 5v5 especially, there's a huge value there.
Mm-hmm.
And Night Sisters is actually also in my top 5 favorite teams. But these days, I think actually, I personally get a huge amount of use out of Bad Batch.
Oh, yeah, they're fantastic.
You don't really need that many gear levels or relic levels on them. Like Calvin Awesome has done an awesome whole series on like Gear 12 Bad Batch taking out a bunch of different relic teams.
Yeah.
Gear 11 can do it too.
Yeah, exactly. It's insane. If you get your train started, they're awesome. I think they're the team that I use in virtually every single GAC in one way or another to get a good win.
All right. And my choice would actually be the Dash Prepared team. I am just such a big fan of it, and not just because Young Han's in it, but it's just defense and offense. It's really, really good. Obviously, there is a little bit of RNG in it on offense if you don't have Vandal stay alive, but there's nothing more satisfying for me than loading into a battle, going well after them, and just having them just completely kill your team, but everyone just keeps reviving non-stop. For me, it's really fun, and they shoot up as well. Like, I don't know, you probably both have Dash teams, right? Or
I haven't applied the Omicron, but I've got.
You haven't done the Omicron. It's a really good team. I love it. I love it. Right, we have another question which I'm going to bring up now because it's a good one. Are you both ready for Malgus this conquest? Is the first part. Yeah, both going to unlock him. And the question was...
I'm going to unlock.
Awesome. The question was going to be, what potential counters are you planning, if any?
What am I planning to use him for, or what am I planning to stop if I put him on defense, or both?
I think the question is, he gets unlocked in less than a month. Your first Grand Arena, which obviously you're both in high-end Kyber, so it's most likely. Your opponent slaps him on defense, all the Omicrons applied. How are you going to beat him? Or do you have no idea?
Like I was saying earlier, I don't tend to plan that far in advance. Yeah. No. Because I don't, I mean, conceptually I've read his kit, sure, and, I have some idea of what it does, but I haven't actually sat down and thought through how I would beat him. I would probably, I don't remember the crit involvement. My, first reaction is to do, I'll have a GL, probably, on offense that I can use.
Yep.
The stun, the GR stun thing is still in play, so it could be something... I forgot it was. Anyway, short answer, no.
Right.
But I would find something like bounty hunters, maybe 2-shot if you need to. But I don't know.
Okay.
Same. Bounty hunters have possibility just because you see a little bit of that within Conquest, so hopefully that translates. But until he goes live, it's really hard to predict these kinds of things.
Of course. I just thought it was a cool question, so I thought I'd bring it up to us. Nice teams, though, from both of you, and I'm glad you didn't just say Imperial Troopers. I know I blocked it, but I could sense it. Whenever anyone asks that question, it's Imperial Troopers. And not just Veers, Iden as well. Iden Troopers is also very, very good. Any last comments you want to put on teams, like key teams, like most important teams you'd recommend?
Well, the obviously the best possible offensive team they have now consists of the magnificent and furry Wampa. He's just awesome.
Out of curiosity, because I'm sure it will apply to a lot of people, because there's a lot of people who have gone JML, and obviously you unlock Wampa. Do you recommend people leave him at R3, apply the Omicron, leave it? Or what relic level would you take yours up to?
My Wampa? Sorry, I missed it. Cut off for a second.
Sorry, I was basically saying a lot of people get Wampa or JML and they'll leave him at relic 3 and never touch him again. Would you advise people to basically go and apply a few more relic levels or just leave him as it is?
Yeah, definitely more than relic 3.
Okay.
This counters can be scary at relic 3. Relic 5 they start getting safe. At relic 6, that's when some GL cleanups are a little bit more possible.
Okay.
My Wampa is relic 9.
Would you say
I really like Wampa.
Is he worth the relic 9? Because mine's only relic 5, but I'm tempted to go all the way. I'm just not sure.
I personally think Wampa is an excellent choice for relic 8.
Yep.
Just because there's, especially now with Omicrons, it's very hard to sort of Wampa-proof a team.
Mm-hmm.
Just in terms of how people tend to prioritize their Datacrons, sorry, not with Omicrons. But I think at Relic 8, or Relic 7, I mean, since Relic 8 materials aren't that easy to get also. Is he worth Relic 9 versus like a GL or something? I really don't think so. But, I mean, most GLs do great at Relic 8 versus Relic 9 anyway. and Wampa is a lot more fun to put to Relic 9. So
that's it.
And I would say make sure you get your mods right before you apply those relic levels. I was looking in my Grand Arena history this past week. My Grievous team stood up to a Wampa twice. I didn't check the relic level on it, but I was pretty surprised by the result.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's a great point.
There is a bit of a split, isn't there? Some people go full health, and some people like to go a combination of tenacity and health, and some people like to go just tenacity. Personally, I use 2 tenacity sets, 1 health set, and go all health primaries, including the arrow. What do you both use on your Wampas?
It depends on the relic levels. The higher relic levels you have, you can switch to more tenacity.
Yeah.
If you're lower relic level, you gotta go health.
Yeah, okay. Hopefully.
I personally don't go the tenacity route at all. I don't have any tenacity sets or primaries. I have some tenacity secondaries.
Yeah.
But I believe the only real point of tenacity on Wampa is to play against Iden.
Yeah.
And I'd much prefer to counter Iden with something else if people build her super potency-ish.
Okay.
So I don't play that at all. And because mine is higher relic levels, I don't actually like health sets either. I went primarily defense sets. Because in like 90% of the counters, you'll take less damage with defense sets than you will with health sets.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. I have learned something today. All right, so
defense mods are the unsung heroes.
Yeah. There's I can't remember who made it. There was a content creator. I've got it pinned somewhere. Who did a spreadsheet or something, and you can input the values, and it tells you like the effective health after changing it. And yeah, defense sets tended to give you the most value there. Anyways, keeping on the same topic of like key teams, what is a key character or couple characters you'd recommend people farm up? Because obviously, there's loads of people who probably see this video, and obviously there's people both in Kyber, and there's people going to be in Bronzium and Chromium. Basically, the whole Grand Arena spectrum here. What is a couple of characters you would tell people, go and farm them up, even if you don't necessarily have the team? So, I'll give you guys an example. Gideon. I think you could both agree, even if you don't have a team for Gideon, it's still worth taking him up to be able to plug him in certain situations. Are there any other characters you'd recommend there?
I mean, it also depends on where you are in your GL chase, but like Gideon is a great example, certainly. I think Thrawn is another excellent character. There's a ton of them.
Yeah.
I mean, Padme, but most people have Padme early on in the game. Geonos and Brood Alpha.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's a number of characters that are off of your GL track that are absolutely worth having at GLs. Like if you're not going for SLKR, a lot of players won't have a number of those characters at relics. But if you have a relic crew, that's going to be great for a finalizer counter. If you have a relic Kylo Ren, that gives you an Old Republic solo counter.
Yes. Yeah.
And having those characters that are off of your goals, some of those are absolutely worth making sure that you have farmed or at relics.
Okay. The two that I would say for me are the number 1 and 2 plug and play characters for me is Armorer. I want to think Armorer is arguably the best of all of them, just because they just completely change a counter. You know, just think Sith Eternal versus JMK. The difference in a win can be as small as 3 stacks of Beskar or no stacks, and the other one, maybe I'm a bit biased, but definitely Sortie. I just think they're really fun. There's loads of fun stuff you can do with them, and I mean, I don't know. It's like I know some of you may have seen the video I did last month. It's little things like SLKR against Lord Vader. You can put SLKR, Armorer, Sortie, and as long as Armorer is the VIP, they'll stealth from Lord Vader's AoE, and then you're guaranteed 3 stacks. And it's it's expensive, but that's the kind of thing that I like, having a character you can just plug in anywhere, and they do really fun stuff. And the reason I want to bring up Sortie is, I don't know if you guys realized or saw, they're now farmable, and they're on like the third section of Darkside.
Yeah.
So
it's a great node.
Yeah. And I would say honestly, depending on if you're in a GL chase, maybe not. But if you're just coming out of one, 100% I would say go ahead and farm them up. Because I was sitting down this morning and thinking, there's so many droids. Like the droid team for Sortie, if you want to run that team, is basically just journey guide requirements. BB-8, if you do first order, you're getting BB-8. T3, if you do Jedi Knight Revan, you're getting T3. Is it Jedi Knight Revan, Darth Revan? One of the two. You get them done. And then if you do Malik, you have to have them Gear 12 anyway if you choose to use them. IG is needed for Executor. So you're basically getting a team given to you. So, I don't know what you think, but I think they are going to become a big player in the future. I'm loving your answers though. So let me just see.
And to add to that, Sortie is one of those characters that's pretty functional at a lower gear level. So even you can use it in process.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's Sortie is like to me, almost an extension of the design they did with all of the Starkiller marquees.
Yeah.
Like all of those characters were awesome or are still awesome at Gear 11, Gear 8, Gear 12, whatever. Like you don't need them to be 7 stars to make great use of them.
I have noticed the marquees they're releasing now seem to be very, very good characters, but they also seem to be kind of taking teams we wouldn't have used before and making them really good. Like Iden took, the really bad Imperial Troopers that no one would have touched, and all of a sudden people are taking to Relic 7, Relic 8. Like Stormtrooper, Magma Trooper, all of these characters.
Yeah.
Dash, I'm not going to say anything bad about Young Han, but he's obviously taking a faction people didn't use before, making them very good. Mara, not so much. I think Empire was already pretty good. I love Radis. I wish I had him to use.
Radis is pretty cool. He, especially in GAC, if you put his Omicron or whatever, like it's very interesting to use him even against the Inquisitors.
Yeah. Because
they're all Empires and have some TN gain mechanics in there.
Yeah.
It's fun.
All right, and then I want to do a small section because I know this is really big for a lot of people, and I'm sure you've maybe both encountered this. You go into your Grand Arena, whether or not you scout or not, don't worry about that, but you just have a quick look at the fastest characters in your opponent's team, and you're like, wow, they've got like 5 or 6 characters above, say, 350 speed or 300 speed or whatever threshold is yours. Remember, it's all relative. And you've got maybe 1 or 2. How do you, not necessarily plan, but when you go into battles, how do you ensure you can win when you're completely outmodded? Is it possible, basically? Say that your opponent's got 3 times as good mods as you have. Do you have any advice for people?
It's definitely possible. Oh, go ahead, Ken.
I was just going to say, whatever Still Plays does, do that. No, but honestly, my mods are pretty good, but nowhere near like the most amazingest. But because of the playstyle that I generally have, which is focusing on my offense, it's changed a little bit with like, honestly, Grand Inquisitor has changed things a little bit with his weird turn meter stuff. A lot of the new characters have some way to make sure that they're super fast or go first.
Yep.
But in some ways that's made it easier because all of the new characters have non-GL characters. All of the new characters have a non-GL, non-speed required, I don't want to say like hard counter, but like every single, could be, let's put Starkiller aside because that's sort of like a GL level team right there, but any of the other characters, there's an option to beat them for relatively high banners without a GL and without caring about speed.
Yep.
So I generally don't tend to play any matches based upon beating them with similar level speed mods. Like maybe my troopers will beat Darth Revan, but unless Darth Talon is there, Piet has a natural like 7 or 8 speed advantage over Darth Revan in the first place, and a lot of people don't run fast Darth Revan. So, like in general, I don't play the speed mod matchup. I don't have great top end speed mods. I just try and focus on teams that will beat them regardless of speeds, so I don't have to worry about it.
It comes down to just using the right counter. If you're going for speeds, like sometimes you might miss something within the mechanics that you're not factoring in and be wrong about it. Usually it'll just be a key character needs to be faster, so it doesn't really matter if the opponent has more speed mods overall or more concentrated speed mods.
Yep.
It's just using the right tool for the job.
Okay. I'm sure a lot of people will find that useful, because I know, especially in my Discord server, I've had people, speak to me and say, they see these Darth Revans, for example, 340 speed, which doesn't seem like a lot with how characters are fast now, but that's like, what, plus 170 or something? I mean, Darth Revan's really slow. I'm a big advocate for not actually making him fast, because the amount of investment you need to make Darth Revan, 350 speed and have him beaten by troopers is kind of a bit odd to me. I don't really see a point in it. But there's people who see that and they panic and they say, how do I beat this? And I think it's really important. You said, just know your counters. And luckily, someone here, I'm not going to say their name because they probably already know, has a great resource that everyone can use to find out the counters to characters. You want to go ahead and tell them?
Besides the Grand Arena Science tool, man, go check out the SWGOH.gg counters. It doesn't give you any videos there, obviously, but if you spend a couple of minutes, it's very easy to see, like, hey, here are the top 5 counters that beat them 97+% of the time.
Yep.
And oftentimes, you're like, I'm just saying, for me at least, I'll be like, oh yeah, of course, I even forgot about that team because I haven't used it versus this other team for 3 GACs or something like that.
Yeah.
But yes, please use Grand Arena Science. And tell me what I'm missing so I can find more videos. But there's a lot to be said for spending like 2 minutes going to GG and looking at the counter results.
My only issue with using GG instead of Grand Arena Science is it doesn't tell you the stats or the relic levels, and it doesn't tell you how to do it. And say it's something that you've never gone up before against. For example, I'll take the example, say JML against Lord Vader, which can be a little bit sketch. It can work, but it's not, the most reliable thing ever. And if that's your first time doing it, looking at GG and going, it can win. But if you don't know how to do it, which happened to me in my Grand Arena, you're gonna fall flat. And that's kind of my one issue with that. Alright, so let me just see what the next thing is. Sorry guys, I'm just looking at... I have a list on my phone of things to talk about today. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about the different, leagues in Grand Arena. Now, I know we're all in Kyber, but this is more of an advice to people who aren't. Because obviously not everyone's in Kyber, especially now that the whole system has changed. It's not like someone who's 1 million GP can get into Kyber, they're now locked further down. So say you're in Carbonite, where it's, 4 teams? 3 teams. 3 character teams, 1 fleet team. I think it bumps up to 6 teams. Let me get it up on my phone real quick so I can tell you the exact number of teams. But my question's going to be, how many... sorry guys, give me 1 second. How many teams would you recommend someone to farm to compete in each league? So, to give you guys the numbers, we'll talk 5v5, 3v3 is completely different as we know. So in 5v5, it's 3 character teams, 1 fleet for Carbonite. It then bumps up to 5 characters and 1 fleet in Bronzium. It's then 7 characters and 2 fleets in Chromium. 9 characters, so it just goes up by 2 each time. 9 characters and 2 fleets in Erodium, and 11 characters and 3 fleets in Kyber. So if we say, for example, and start down at the bottom, Carbonite. So you need 3 teams in Carbonite, 1 fleet. how many teams would you say, on average, people should aim for? And by teams, I mean at least, geared up to a level that's kind of on par with where their roster would be. So if, for example, they're 1 million GP, which a lot of people will be in Carbonite, you wouldn't expect them to have like 3 whole relic teams. But maybe a team of a couple of relics and some gear 12s would be acceptable. How many teams would you recommend? So that was a really long question.
Oh, I actually have an alt account where I'm in Bronzium 1 right now.
Okay.
That's around 3.2 million GP.
Yeah.
The shorthand is just double how many defensive teams is the floor for what you need. On my alt account, I am trying to do it with 0 relics to prove a point about roster development.
Okay.
So
Cool.
in that scenario, you're going after journey guide characters faster than your opponents are, because if they're focused on Galactic Legends, it is going to concentrate their roster in one location, and it usually makes them a little vulnerable on offense or on defense, depending on how they play it. But it's the same kind of deal at Kyber. You can race for things or more things than your opponents. Like, one of the things I'm seeing in Bronzium is people just don't have enough fleets.
Yeah.
And that's true through Kyber.
Yeah.
If you're developing your fleets earlier than your opponents, you will always have an advantage that is probably going to secure you wins if they can't full clear you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, to me, exactly what Still Plays There said at the end is the most important part. Like, as you're developing a roster, and it's very true, you'd be surprised how true it is in like the top 50 of Kyber 1. People still don't have enough good fleets to guarantee that they will clear fleets every time. So I think like focusing on your offense, because ultimately if you can clear and your opponent clears, but one of you doesn't clear fleets, you're going to win every single time. Well, the person who clears fleets will win. So having good fleets and...
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you then.
No, I was just saying having good fleets and then making sure that you can clear the character zones is the most important thing broadly.
I was just going to say, I'm amazed that you said in top 50 there are still people that don't have fleets like sorted. That just amazes me. Wow, that's quite shocking.
It's a hard thing to pivot on if you just didn't care about it.
Yeah, that's true. Because obviously certain characters will need higher relics. Obviously they're not as desirable. For example, Biggs in a Rebel lineup ideally is going to have higher relics. People may not want to do that. It's interesting. And obviously Relic 9s obviously play a part as well. I don't have any pilots Relic 9. I think I do. My 2 Relic 9s on my account are JML and Bosk. I like my Bosk. I wouldn't recommend him. Like, as a Relic 9, I would say do someone like Lord Vader or JML first. But he works.
Yeah.
But I'm very tempted to do First Order Officer for the First Order ship. I think that would be
I'm
really fun.
very tempted by First Order Officer.
Yeah. But the problem is he's not the best character outside of ships. But yeah, I'm very tempted by that. And obviously that's going to be more of a thing in the top 50 of Kyber, I'm sure. Where those high.
Somebody in this chat has a Relic 9 First Order Officer and wouldn't recommend it.
Oh, really?
Like, good to know.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. I actually really enjoy ships. I find them one of the more... It's like the beginning of SWGOH when there is no way to influence your character's stats besides leveling or relic them. Like, ships are the same way.
Yep.
You can't... It sucks and it's cool at the same time. But really, Relic 7 or Relic 8, I think, does make some difference. But in general, I think each of the relic levels above Relic 7 probably just adds like a couple % chance. Or removes a couple percentage points of RNG.
Yeah.
Like Relic 8 and Relic 9, you're still going to get killed if Xanadu Blood double taps both times and you get crits. So,
well, that's one of the reasons I didn't relic 9 my Piet is because I don't struggle beating R9 executors. Like, if I lose, it's because they're using the free attacker lineup and I take the wrong capital ship or something. Most of the time I'm winning consistently without it. And then I think to myself, why? Because obviously relic 9s, you either have to pay a lot of like real money or a lot of resources. And for me, I see so many... It's like my last match. I don't know whether you guys will agree. My opponent had a relic 9 Piet, but a relic 7 JML. And I kind of thought, which of those two would be more valuable? And to me, it's always JML. Always. There's just this really big trend where everyone's putting an R9 on Piet. And I don't really think I don't think that's very... the best option, basically. Also, something a little bit different I want to touch on, still players, you said this earlier. It's about having a wider roster and those extra characters. And that's why I'm kind of against this whole trend of rushing a GL, you know, rushing Sith Eternal Emperor, rushing SLKR. You know, you go for these characters, but say you farm, like, for example, I'm doing a free-to-play account at the moment, which is about going for Starkiller from the get-go. Like, Starkiller is my first big character. Now, the idea is, you get Starkiller at the end, who I'm sure you can both agree is a fantastic character, both offense and defense. But then you get Dash, who if you build up his team is a very strong one, Smugglers. You get Kyle Katarn, who changes Mon Mothma to be amazing. And then you also get Talon, who does have her uses. And I just feel like if you're in that sort of position, where you have 3 or 4 teams built up, and you know, good teams, if you go up against someone who's rushed supremely to Kylo Ren, what are they going to do? Solo one team of Kylo and then not clear another team? This kind of what I'm getting at here. And I just didn't know whether you would kind of agree. I
completely agree.
Okay, cool.
I completely agree too.
Very tempted.
Yeah, it's just I do a lot of roster reviews on my channel, and there's a lot of people who come on and you know they're straight away farming these GLs, and that might get you out of Carbonite and it might get you out of Bronzium. But once you go into the higher ones and you start going up against people who are dropping, maybe they aren't the best at the game, or maybe they just don't try. But with their bigger rosters, your 2 teams. I mean, even with the First Order TIE Pilot Omicron, you've only got 2 good teams from a Kylo Rush. Yeah, fleets aside. I mean, the fleet is good, but
the other aspect about not going, or why I dislike rushing a GL, there's all these other parts of the game that are being ignored, whether it's assault battles, galactic challenges, conquest, or whatever. There's a ton of resources that you're just leaving on the table by not having the characters to participate, and you're slowing down your roster development overall, where maybe by spreading out you're not getting high-end things as quickly, but you're getting a much higher overall increase in your resource income that can be distributed faster throughout your entire roster.
I think you're spot on. I think the
Another...
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say one other thing in the same vein is that, like, obviously every league in GAC is different, but in general, if you look at the different rewards for being in the various leagues, yes, you get your daily crystals based upon your league, but you generally tend to make a lot of crystals from winning in GAC. So if you can find a lower league that you win more frequently in, versus like rushing to a league where you get crushed half the time and you end up in the bottom, you know, the actual crystal income you get from winning 1 or 2 extra matches every season generally tends to be better than if you didn't win those 2 matches but had the better crystal income from like being up 1 or 2 divisions or something like that. So I think that's just another reason why it's good to have a broader roster that allows you to be more stable. Oh, still plays left.
No, it's refocusing the camera. It was
Oh, okay.
Something else I kind of wanted to touch on here is Omicrons. We already talked a little bit about Sarge and her Omicron. I'll give you a second to refocus your camera.
No, he's back. His camera's back, but I think something in the display.
I think I've just got a short delay. That must be all it is. So Mike was very impressed, still plays, with your answer there. They said they love to see that resource mindset. So you should be glad. I don't know why. For some reason, my Discord isn't picking up your camera. We'll just see if it comes on at some point.
You may have to remove it and re-add it as a source.
Yeah. No, this is Discord. Here.
Oh, weird. Because I see it. Oh, there
back.
we go.
Hey, you're back. Awesome. So, something I wanted to touch on, which my mind has now gone blank. Oh yes, when people talk about farming a GL, I see so many people who are just starting a game, and yes, we all know the game has its issues, but I'm sure you can both agree that there's been a lot of changes in the last couple of years, and new players have been joining. We've had part of Phase 1, whether or not we ever get the rest of the gear changes, which were good. We've had shards increased. I'm sure you'll remember the dark times where even these stores gave you like no shards and it took forever to max that character. So it's becoming easier, and we're having new players join, and then they're seeing these videos or these publications basically saying farm a GL, farm SLKR, he's an amazing character, and that's not a lie, it's true. But I don't think they've realised that it's going to take them a year to a year and a half.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing for me, If you think from a Grand Arena perspective, you're going to be going a year to a year and a half, and you're probably going to be losing a lot of the time. With your crew lead, your Phasma lead. As soon as you go up against, say, Padme, it happened. I've got a account that's going for SLKR, and Padme walled me. It was a Gear 12 Padme. I couldn't beat it, and it was absolutely horrible for me. And that's obviously another thing to think about when it goes to GLs. And then the other thing is, when we're talking about core teams, if you think, say, hypothetically, you're in, I don't know, what was the team requirements for these zones? So say we're in a Rhodium, just below Kyber. Now you need 2 fleets and 9 characters. Now say you have gone SLKR and C, 2 GLs back to back, which I think is a bad idea, personally. Because I don't see the value in just rushing GL to GL. I think you need to build out teams. So if you think SLKR farm, you get the fleet, you get a Phasma team, you get a crew team, and obviously SLKR, who could solo. So we'll count him as himself. And then C team, you get Sith Eternal, Imperial Troopers, and a Sith team. Okay. Now your opponent has gone no GLs, but they've gone Iden team and normal Imperial Trooper team, a Smuggler team with Dash, a Droid team, and let's say CLS. Now, which one do you think would have a better chance of winning that matchup?
Depends on where they put them on offense and defense, and
obviously,
what their mods are like, and
yeah, obviously. It's a tough question to answer, I know. But what I'm trying to get at is just the fact that for those people who are watching, I kind of want to get it into people's minds that you don't have to have the best character in the game to be competitive. I think it's better to have multiple good teams than one good team. One great team.
Yeah, devil's in the details, but one of the things was implied by what you said with some of those team examples is you were also bringing up examples of relatively recent kits that are really powerful. And the game is weighted towards those newer kit mechanics. And if you're going after a GL, largely, except for some of these more recent Omicrons, we're looking at kits that are very outdated. So there's ways through it with a lot of these newer characters.
Yeah. And I just remembered what I was going to say earlier. Omicrons. And that does make a big difference for a wider roster. For example, SLKR has 1 Omicron for GAC, 1 for Territory War. But say you go for, these older teams like Night Sisters. They are easy to gear up. If we think from an efficiency standpoint, taking Night Sisters to say Gear 12 is very easy. And I think...
I'm on the call. I'm on the call.
Oh.
And I think it's very easy to gear these teams up, and obviously Omicrons make a big difference. So my question was going to be, what are kind of, both of you, your top 3 Omicrons for Grand Arena that you would recommend people apply?
You broke up there. Could you repeat that?
Sorry, yeah. I was basically saying, what are your top 3 Omicrons you would apply for Grand Arena, and you would encourage people to apply? And let's try to avoid Starkiller because it's kind of a no-brainer.
Well, Wampa.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wampa, yeah.
Iden should be one of the first Omicrons that any account puts on. The return on that is pretty crazy. A lot of teams, especially early on, aren't going to have counters for it.
Yeah.
It's almost a default hold if your opponent isn't ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. I haven't played with it or seen it in action, so I can't say it for sure. But I think the Asajj Ventress Omicron for any account that has less than 3 GLs or 4 GLs, maybe even, I think the Asajj Omicron might be up there with, not really with Iden necessarily, but like in the top 5, I could easily see. Just because it essentially turns the team into sort of a mini troopers train that is very, very difficult to overcome. And it's not even the TM so much for Asajj, but when you have Plague and then Healing Immunity, you remove the ability for most teams to ever recover from that. So that part, I think, is crazy powerful. And I think something between like Qui-Gon. Sorry, still plays. Go ahead.
I was going to say the same. Run with it.
Yeah, be something either Qui-Gon or Zam would be up there in my top 3 also.
Yep.
Qui-Gon over Zam for me. My issue with Zam is it's making an already good and usable team better. But Qui-Gon is giving you a whole new team to use on offense or defense, and that extra team
very good point.
Has a much larger impact.
Okay, so just for argument's sake, I'll list you my Omicrons. I have 10 applied on my account at the moment. So, including other Omicrons from other game modes, I have Phasma, Darth Talon, Dash Rendar, Director Krennic. Don't ask me why. I thought it'd be cool. I'm not enjoying it. I think it's a complete waste of Omicron. I'm not a fan. Qui-Gon.
Very in vogue for 3v3.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to say. Now it's going to be more valuable.
Yeah. My problem with Krennic's one is it doesn't fix his biggest issue, which is he's so slow that, okay, you can bring Gideon, but if he doesn't take turns, you're not going to really be benefiting from his stuff. And he's like base 140 something speed. I don't know. Anyway, so Embo, by the way, Embo is underrated, guys. You should be on that one. Qui-Gon, Starkiller, he's unique, the conflict one. Tusken Raider, which is my favorite one at the moment. I love it.
Fun.
I love it. I wish it was 5v5. Like, for me, what makes an Omicron good is turning a useless team into a good team, and Tusken Raider is so much fun. Wampa and Zam. So those are the ones I have. I do not have Iden. I have a 2-star Iden. I missed the marquee. I was busy. So I never got around to it, so I have a 2-star Zated Iden. Yes. So before we carry on talking about Omicrons, we've got a good comment here. It's from Nothing Face, and they have said Datacrons are starting to change that again. Top heavy rosters are going to make a comeback. Any thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
It's true, but it also depends relative to your level, because not every account is going to be able to engage with it in the same way to the same degree. So the impact of Datacrons is going to probably be more focused in Kyber 1, and as you go into lower divisions, you're going to see a different amount of engagement. And if you're more engaged than your opponent, you'll probably be fine. But it's right. It's completely right. And it's one of the things I don't like about Datacrons is it limits the ability for me to play the way that I like to play. And I'm worried about what that does for my enjoyment overall, where I'm forced to play a different style in order to engage with the new content.
Okay, very good answer.
Yeah, I think Datacrons, putting aside the ability to just pay, well, with the new packs especially, to literally pay your way to the whatever Datacron you want. There's no purchase limit or anything. I don't really like that. But in general, you can get, now that they've made these changes with the acquisition rate, you can get something like 3, I think, 1 level 9 and 1 level 6, or 3 level 6 Datacrons, just from doing conquest and getting rewards and winning like half of your territory wars. You get quite a lot in terms of totally 100% free Datacron materials.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you then.
No, I was just going to say, because, I'll finish sort of quick, sorry.
No, that's all right.
Because they're sort of free, and the level 6 abilities especially can be very powerful, I think they actually, if you go up an opponent who places all of their GLs on defense, then yes, they have a bigger impact on the top end rosters.
Yep.
But if you go up against opponents who play sort of a mix, which frankly is most opponents these days in the upper part of Kyber, Datacrons have an amazing impact on the non-GL teams. Like, yeah, everybody sees Lord Vader and his, the 4 debuffs, which is just a level 3 Datacron.
Yep.
Or the popular Rey and JMK videos that, oh no, the world is ending. But no one shows you the Shock T and Bad Batch troopers with the stun Datacron.
Yeah.
Or the, General Grievous with the potency gain Datacron.
Yeah.
Like, it changes the low level counters enormously. So having a broader roster, I think, at that level is pretty cool. Can be.
You made a very good point. One of the teams I've been running past couple of weeks is actually a Newt Dooku team. So Newt, Dooku, Asajj, Zombie, and Django on defense. And I put the potency. So whenever they don't have debuffs, you get potency. That's got me a hold in every, I think it was 5 out of 6 rounds is held for me. Whether or not that's a Datacron, I don't know. But that seems really, really good, especially with Dooku. We've got a couple more questions, which I think are really good here. Firstly, Kirby has said, hi, Mr. Stills. Someone else has said, personally, for low-level players, Qui-Gon Jinn Omicron is very good. It's an Omicron anyone can get and use off and make actual plays. My only worry there is don't sabotage your roster. If you're low GP and you've got a Padme team, getting Qui-Gon may just ruin your Padme team and then you lose a team. 2 more questions. I'm going to fire them real quick and we can answer them. So, Nothing Face again has said, Asajj hard to justify with how often SLKR is taking Daka and Zombie. Which I want to comment on in a second. And the next one is going to be from Mike. Question for us all. Is there any characters we've rushed or paid for that we ended up regretting and wished we could have done it for free? We'll start with that question first.
Well, I just accidentally spent a bunch of crystals with the auto-clicking on Sortie. Not the worst character to accidentally get to 5 stars, but not how I usually play.
Yeah, I think one of the characters that I regret spending my resources on, at least, was Darth Sidious's Zeta, when Zeta's first came out. I still love the character, but he has a pretty nice Omicron for TW, but our guild doesn't use him anywhere. So, yeah, I regret that Zeta.
Yeah, I don't have many regrets, partly because of my play philosophy is not putting on resources. So it usually protects me from making those kinds of decisions.
That's nice.
For me, it's Krennic's Omicron. I just don't like it, personally. Moving on to the next question, like we said, Asajj is hard to justify. And I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about Sortie again. Sorry, guys, I know. We've got to put up there again. And going forward, if people catch on and start using Sortie in the SLKL lineup, if we're using Daka, it's most likely people are using him to counter, say, Lord Vader. If you can use Sortie and Armor to do the same job, and Asajj's Omicron turns out to be as good as you're both predicting, I think that would be a good thing going forward.
And another thing too, that the Lord Vader, SLKR versus Lord Vader is probably onto. I think you'll start seeing other Lord Vader counters as soon as this new Datacron is active in the next 5v5 season, because they have some crazy light side buffs there.
Yep.
But besides that, as soon as the current, Inquisitoria set goes away in 2 weeks or 2 months, sorry.
Yep.
Then you can probably, we'll see what the other Datacron sets are, but you'll probably go back using Fennec for most counters. And then suddenly the Night Sisters are free again, and you have I'm cautiously excited about that Omicron. I think it could be really good.
You've both kind of got me hooked, and I'm tempted. And it's the final thing about Omicrons, don't worry, we won't be on this for too long, was going to be, what's your opinion on applying more than one Omicron on a single character? For example, Starkiller. Now, most people only have his main unique, the one that gives the buffs. However, there is an argument that the Dispel, the special, when he was Force, whatever it's called, there is an argument that's a good one. Malga's coming up. Obviously, he has 3. What's your opinion from a GAC perspective on having one character with multiple Omicrons, or say applying an extra one to say a Sarge or an extra one to say Dash and having only one Omicron on the big character?
It's all about return on investment for me, so I'm going to be careful. I'm going to want a prove it case. I think with Melgus, there's probably 2 Omicrons that are pretty safe.
Yep.
Yeah.
But spreading them is going to give you more impact. When you're putting them on just one squad, they're going to be used up in one instance. Spreading them throughout your roster ensures that those benefits of the Omicron is going to be in more places. It's like early on with relics, if you were playing at the time, playing with one squad with 5 relics or having 5 relics distributed through 5 different teams.
Yep.
There's different impacts, and those are how I'm approaching Omicrons right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, in general, especially in GAC, when you tend to have a wider selection of teams that you need to use on offense and defense, it makes more sense to spread up your Omicrons, depending on your acquisition rate, obviously, or if you buy any of the Omicron packs or whatever. Yeah. But it's sort of, I think, for some guilds, sort of like the TW view of things versus the GAC view of things. In GAC, you usually have a number of teams that you could use to counter some team. So if you don't have the both Omicrons, then you use a different team.
Okay.
In TW, it tends to be like, let's use Grand Inquisitor as an example. You can use Grand Inquisitor in TW to beat JMK, but you need 2 Omicrons to do that. So any TW guild will require those 2 Omicrons because that's like their setup. But I think in GAC, go broad, give yourself more teams.
Okay. Alright, so here is another question. So, someone has actually asked, what would you say are the best pre-1 million GP GAC teams? So we're talking very early game. What are the first teams you would farm to be good in Grand Arena? And I'll get us started.
Besides the Tuscans, or in addition to it?
Actually, being serious, Tuscan Raider Omicron would be pretty nasty at sub 1 million GP. Because the only way to beat on defense, the only way to beat it is the AoE, to kill them both at once. Or use Django Zeta. So if someone...
I don't think you can get pretty early though. He's at like a later node, I think.
He may be. I don't know, I'm curious now. So yeah, any teams... See, the first one that comes to mind for me is Imperial Troopers, because even at Gear 7 and 8, they're going to be beating those top tier teams.
Yeah, Troopers just needs to be one of the first squads, so you should have them on a low account. But I wouldn't be working directly towards Grand Arena. What I would be doing is working towards a good team like CLS, and by working towards that goal, you're going to be ending up with Ewoks, Bounty Hunters, and have a good foundation for Grand Arena.
Okay. Very nice. Anything to add?
No, I mean, I honestly have very little knowledge of the lower GP ranges.
That's fine.
So
it's fine. Okay, so next question. Here we go. Can we talk very briefly about the importance of fleets versus characters for GAC purposes, and which to invest in? For example, they've given an example of having a roster full of GLs or a roster not full of GLs but having good fleets. So essentially, what would be more beneficial to you as a player? A roster with, say, Executor and both get 2 fleets, or a roster with, say, Sith Eternal, SLKR, JML? Which of those two would be your preferred roster?
Well,
I'm going to go with the fleets, but...
Yeah, I agree 100% with fleets. But something to keep in mind, too, it's who knows how it'll change with Profundity and what Raven's Claw does to Rebels, but I think Executor is, frankly, of less value now than it ever has been.
Yep.
Simply because Rebels, I mean, you have to have sort of high relic pilots and only certain lineup, really, but Rebels can beat the Executor attacker lineups. And I think it was, again, Calvin Awesome, who, even though he's up there in Kyber 1, like, he routinely 2-shots Executor fleets, but he 2-shots them for like 49 banners.
Yeah.
And it's like 100% success rate. So that saves him a huge amount of resources if he had not gone for Executor himself, but he always plays his Executor on defense. So I think just having a strong fleet in general is going to get you a lot further, because there's only 2 or 3 or whatever, depending on your league. Fleets, so
talking about
I'd say go hard for fleets.
I now only put my Executor on offense, because whenever it was on defense, it'd get one-shotted anyway. So I take mine on offense. I slap Houndstooth with the Holdo ship. Can't remember what it's called off the top of my head now. The resistance ship. Yeah. I use my Houndstooth there, which makes it a bit better than it already was. And I just use the 3 attackers and Slave 1 and get like 70 plus banners on offense, and that's where I use my Executor. I don't really see a point using it anywhere else lately, because honestly, you put it at defense, it's going to be food for Finalizer, and if you set it with the 3 attackers and you actually look at the ship you're up against, like I do, it's food for Negotiator or food for Malevolence. They can both kill that lineup pretty easily. So yeah, it's a tough question, like you said. Executor, I don't think it has as much value now as it did when it first came out. Also, we'll have to see, because the way the game's going, the next ship that's going to come out, the Profundity, it's just going to be so good, and probably the Executor won't even beat it, which I don't like the thought of.
I don't think the Profundity is going to be a hard counter to Executor. I think they gave us the Executor counters with the Echelon.
Okay.
So you have First Order that's very reliable. It does have some relic gates. You need to make sure that you go first in the most commonly used counter. But I think Profundity is sort of going to be a Negotiator +1.
Yep.
Sort of like Empire. It's going to compete with Empire, I think. Maybe it will beat Executor, but I think they want to maintain Executor at the top, in my opinion.
Okay.
To just add one thing about fleets in general right now, the biggest difference maker for me is the Empire and TIE Interceptor. They're usually the fleet getting the holds for me these days.
Yeah. 100% agreed. Actually, I just won. Well, my opponent didn't clear my fleet zone with an Empire. They failed 3 times on the Empire fleet.
Yeah.
It just happens. I mean, it's crazy good ship, the Interceptor.
I do not have luck with my Empire getting holds. I put it on defense all the time. Unfortunately, I just don't get anything going for me there.
Well, one thing that you can do that's sort of tricky, and I've done it a few times with... I do the same thing with the Executor that you do and save it for offense without Houndstooth.
Yep.
But you put Houndstooth in a Chimera lineup with TIE Interceptor.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem with Chimera lineups in general, people mostly fail because they can't kill it fast enough.
Yeah.
And Houndstooth is a handy little way to slow them down.
And the Relic 9 might be useful on Bosk. So I might actually try that. I may actually try that. Wow, we've got loads of comments coming in. Sorry for this, guys, but the chat are going pretty crazy here. So we've got a question from Mike. So what defenses earlier on, before you hit higher levels, were solid for both teams and fleets that get holds consistently? I think we can kind of make this question a little bit different so everyone can answer, and basically say what fleets basically have a good team character-wise that you get from investing in the pilots. For example, with the introduction of Radis, who I do not have 7-star, but I wish I did, Rogue One, and suddenly farming. Do you remember everyone was kind of against, so there was a big split, do you farm, Biston and Skyfall Pathfinder, and all of a sudden they actually have a decent team. So like, if you farm a Rebel fleet, you're now getting a decent CLS team and a decent Radis team, for example. So what fleets do you think are kind of like a win-win situation where you get a fleet and you also get a very good team?
Still plays?
Malevolence is one of the best low investment fleets you can get, other than having to farm with get to the Malevolence. You're generally going to have good geos, so you'll have good geo pilots. Then you only need to have General Grievous to make that a fleet that can counter 5 to 7-star negotiators that are all relic, and you don't even have to have a relic on your geos. Just the relic Grievous is going to be enough to carry that. That is a team that, surprisingly, in the early game, maybe it's just my fleet shard, but most players went the negotiator route instead of the Malevolence route, which is just a huge investment.
Yes.
And a lot of slow farms. But I completely agree with Rebels. That's a fleet that any fleet, like when you have the Y-wing that you can pair with the B-wing, any of those pilotless ships just lowers the investment threshold. So that helps with TIE Bomber as well. And the other thing, we talked a little bit about the profundity, but I would also make a small hedge on the Sith, where right now there's no use for them. Something that was alluded to earlier in the conversation was CG making characters that don't have a use, and those Sith ships right now are useless, and CG will release that at some point.
I think you made a really good point about Malevolence, and if you guys just refresh your memories back to before the Grand Arena changes and when crystals were in fleet, before the Dark Times of Executor and all of that fun stuff, in my shard especially, you would have negotiators going for top spot, but they'd all have Relic 7 pilots. But the Malevolence fleet could do the same with Gear 12. I saw one guy with Gear 11 Geos, and he's sitting number 1 spot. And that's kind of, when we're talking about fleets and Grand Arena and obviously all of this fun stuff, and especially for people who aren't in Kyber 1 and you're not in Kyber 2, you don't have access to them all. I think from a Grand Arena perspective, I would always go Malevolence first. I don't know if you would agree. I'd always go Malevolence before Negotiator, because Negotiator, you need high relics for it to be very competitive. Whereas Malevolence, honestly, you have 2 pilotless ships. You put in some Fag at a decent relic level if you can. If he's not relic, it's also fine. And then Spy, and you're golden, you're fine. You're going to beat everything.
It's definitely the best offensive fleet. Most flexible offense. I mean, maybe besides Executor, but that's a much later game thing. But Malevolence is fantastic on offense. Kills. It's like talking about Empire being difficult. Well, not for Malevolence.
Yeah, Malevolence just burns through anything. The only thing I've found is it's not the best on defense. I don't know if my Geos are only Relic 3. I don't know if I took them up to say Relic 7 I'd have better luck, but my Malevolence is pretty rubbish on defense. Alright, I understand.
The other thing I want to add for fleets is the best fleet is just having one.
Yes.
What I'm seeing in a lot of the lower divisions is players will have 1 fleet and not 2 when they need to. Or when they need two fleets, or when it jumps to 2 on defense, they don't have 4 fleets.
Yep.
And by staying ahead of that and never getting complacent, you will always have that fleet advantage. Most players just ignore it. When that Kyber jump happened, where we all needed to get to 6 fleets, tons of players weren't ready for it.
Yeah.
I went up against an opponent, I think it was last week or the week before, in Kyber 2. And they were clearly a mega whale, 7 million GP. Now I have 221 Zetas. They had like 140. But they had all the GLs, and then it got to fleets, and they're putting a 4-star Radis. Was it a 5-star Finalizer? No, it was a 5-star Radis, 5-star Finalizer, and then it was like a 6 or 7-star with the, I think it was Malevolence or Negotiator. And this is Kyber 2. And yeah, it's safe to say the ships were no issue. I think if we can take anything from today, it's that you should definitely farm fleets up. The only problem is you do need to sometimes invest relics into pilots you wouldn't have otherwise used. Now, because of time, I mean, we've been going for about an hour and 20. I'm going to have to wrap up soon because I've got work in a few hours. So, any final thoughts or things you want to say to everyone?
Follow Still Plays guides. Honestly, but seriously, the focus on maximizing the return on your resources is for 99.9% of the players, like all of us. Even though I believe that I spend way less than players who buy every new character and get the most bestest things. Just maximizing the return on your investment will make this game, I think, a lot more fun, and certainly give you a big advantage over people who don't, especially in GAC.
Well, I want to say one thing about your channel, Grand Arena Science. It's a newer channel, it's a little smaller, but nobody watches more Grand Arena than Kin, or like I can't imagine who would that be. And that Grand Arena meta report is just an invaluable resource.
Thank you.
And you're the only person who could possibly make it. There's not another channel that can do it. And that's, you see different flavors of different content creators, and that's one thing that no one else is going to be able to replicate.
That is actually
that's very kind.
A good point. It was one last question, and I wanted to say, Ken, if you don't mind answering this one, who are people you would recommend the people who watch this video actually go out and watch for, say, Grand Arena focused, not necessarily tutorials, but obviously, who basically, what other content creators are out there who you would say you must go watch this person to get that information for how to do things?
Well, this is totally roster dependent and how people enjoy GAC, but some very valuable, I don't know, I tend to like 2 different flavors of GAC players to watch, at least to learn from. One is players like Still Plays, actually, who are focused on optimization and making the most of what they have. And then others are players like, there's a very small YouTuber, his channel name is Axel, AXL.
Yep.
But he's like a high Kyber 1 player, who plays each sort of like in the same quality as like End All Be All for people who don't know him. He's a Kyber 1 player as well, but he takes his time to plan everything out very carefully and tries to play very well.
Yep.
Another really good one is Passanex. He's a streamer also. I think he's more known for being a streamer.
Yep.
Darth Loquitur, who is he plays 2 accounts, more like efficiency player, not like the best GAC player, but very educational to watch.
Yep.
There's this guy Glurmit. I think he loses a lot, but he's very entertaining and quite creative.
Yeah, you nailed that one.
And of course, like players like Zareth and Arnold, they're entertaining. They have a big crowd. But I would say like solo base is more from a gap loving player.
Yeah.
Watching a player like solo base, you see things like more differently than Zareth and Arnold both play sort of like the long GAC matches with strong defenses, which are fun to watch, but not the like for me at least, not what I look for. So there's I won't swear. There's a whole lot of content creators.
Yeah.
And I think it just really depends on what you're looking for. And that's another reason I'll say to go to. Thank you for linking it. The Grand Arena Science. The counter tool actually.
Oh, I can link that one as well. Give me a second.
Because 99.9% of the videos in there are from Grand Arena players who posted their videos, or content creators who post their videos on YouTube. So if you see a fight that you find interesting, go check out that player's channel. There's a ton of awesome creators out there. Like half of the ones that I watch have less than 50 subs. So there's really a lot of great ones out there that are not well known.
Yeah, the channels that are only Grand Arena tend to grow very slowly. It's a hard way to do YouTube, but there are some really great ones out there. One that beat me when we were matched up was Heathen13. I love his videos.
Oh yeah.
And what I think is going to be most helpful is finding a Grand Arena player that is close to your own GP level, because that's where you'll learn the most from. Like if you're way below my account size and you see me using these teams that you're just not going to be able to farm for months or years, like there's a limit to how much utility you can get out of that. But if you're finding players who are right around you, there's a lot you can be learning.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great point.
You're spot on there. And I can't say enough. The Grand Arena Science website is so good, and mainly because, like I said earlier, being able to see and visualize a counter alongside knowing what it is, you can't go beyond that in how useful it is. And the best thing is, and that's what I like, is you've also put in some losses as well. When in your list of battles, there's some that go well and there's also some that go wrong, and then when you watch them you can see maybe this is what you're not supposed to do, and that is so important, because not so much for streamers but maybe for people that upload and edit their content, they're only really producing the wins or the good battles, and we don't see where things can go wrong. For example, I spent ages looking at how to beat Starkiller with Imperial Troopers. I don't go up against them a lot in Kyber 2, but I started recently. Yeah. And little things like I marked down Dark Trooper, and it didn't even occur to me that counted as a debuff, so Dark Trooper's offense was halved. Now my Dark Trooper's only Relic 5, and a big misplay, I should have him higher, but a Relic 5 Dark Trooper with half offense, I got stuck on just Starkiller on his own. And that's where having, being able to see where things go wrong, or seeing where things go right, you can kind of go, this person didn't mark down Dark Trooper, they won, or this person did and they didn't. I think it's very, very useful. Anyways, I'm going to have to end the stream because I've got to get some sleep before I start working.
Let me add one quick thing, because I'm gathering there's a Young Han thing here.
There may be.
With Young Han, if you're at a early account, a lot of players ignore the Smuggler's Run event. And it's a mistake. It is one of the best events in the game. It recurs every 2 weeks. Gives you a ton of resources. And Young Han is the key to beating that thing early on. When you don't have a lot of characters or a lot of gear, Young Han can carry that just with his special and his retribution, getting that protection up. He just stays alive.
Do you know what? There's one last thing I need to bring up here. I want you to both give me your opinion real quick. So, I hit 500 subs. That means I have to relic my Young Han. I'm just waiting for the packs to come into the store before I do it. Now, I'm sure you all saw the video that did the rounds a while back of the Smuggler team with Commander Ahsoka beating JMK. I'm sure you both saw that. I think it was Vancel. Is it Vancel who did that video?
The 3v3 one, yeah.
Yeah, there was also a... No, yeah, 3v3 one, but there was also a 5v5 one a while ago as well. Someone did JMK. It was against JMK. They used Dash with Commander Ahsoka. Young Lando kept on stealthing Vandal. Now,
probably Vancel, yeah.
At R9, I calculated it. After about 5 or 6 turns, Young Han's offense is going to be nearing like 15k, 16k, higher than GL's. Now, after 10 turns, he's almost at 20k offense. What do you guys think? I'm going to try it. The first Grand Arena I have him, I'm going to send him in against JMK Cat. Is it a win or is it a loss?
I'd love to see it.
Ditto.
What do you think, though? Win or loss? Come on.
It can certainly win.
Yeah? Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Anyways, with that said, we're going to end the stream, guys. So thank you, everyone, for coming along.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank
both
you very
coming on
much.
the stream. All right.
That's awesome.
And